Let's take a look at how to fix a crack in the top of your guitar. I'm not the greatest crack repairman, finish repairman in the world, but I can do a decent job on it. I just don't like to do it a whole lot because I just don't. It's a tedious, long job that's purely cosmetic most of the times, except in this case, this is that D28 we've been looking at. This is the one I had a little bit of the finish bubble on. It's looking great right now. I mean, it's flush. This one had these two really bad cracks in it right here that I commented on. I said it's interesting that there's two cracks here in parallel grain lines, basically. And what I mean by that, again, is that when Martin does a guitar top, they book match it. So they take a piece of spruce like this, they split it, they lay the two halves open, and that's called a book match. So two pieces of spruce like this. If you have a weak grain line over here, you're going to have a weak grain line over here. And that's probably what happened at this guitar. It got dry or something at some point, and it cracks along that weak grain line. So, first thing I did with this thing was really humidify it. I got this big fat sponge right here, soaked it in water. I set it on a plastic bag like this inside the guitar so the water wouldn't leak out, on the back. And put it in the case, and I left it for a couple of days, and the humidity swelled the wood up, pulled the crack back together. Cracks are due to two causes, basically. Either dryness causes it to split, because when the wood gets dry, it shrinks. And because the guitar top is inside this box right here, it has nowhere to go, so it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and finally just cracks. The second way that a crack can happen is with impact. Kapow! But you would not get the same impact. You would not get a dual impact. Normally you'd have impact up here, down here, on the sides, or something like that. So you've got to know what your cause was. And in the case of a humidity crack, you got to close that crack up together. One little trick I have, I didn't use it on this guitar because these cracks didn't get close enough, but when the crack closes up completely, you can't get glue in there. So sometimes what I do is take hot hide glue, not bottled and not fish glue, but hot, and get it warm, and I smear glue inside there and size the crack, basically. So I've got hide glue in the wood on both sides of the crack, get that dry so that it's not filling the crack. Then I humidify it. When the crack closes together, then I'll take a little bit of water and just run it on there and get a blow dryer, heat dryer, hair dryer, and heat it up a little bit. And what that'll do is reamalgate the hide glue, makes it active again, and it'll, being already in the crack, it'll stick it together. Hide glue won't really hold it together because, again, you're fixing a crack. It's got to have a perfect fit, but it will get enough glue in there to help. And then you put cleats in there if you need to. You kind of use a judgment call on the cleats. I'm not a great big fan of cleats. I don't like adding any extra wood if I don't have to. In this case, I needed to add cleats to it. I added two. I already showed you a picture of them. They were long. And let me get one again. Just in case you missed it the first time. These are the cleats I use. They're pretty long, fairly big, but they're thin. Super thin, about 50 thousandths of an inch, 60 thousandths. As thin as I can sand them, basically. The grain on this one runs this way. Runs up and down the long ways. And what I did was I made a pretty good sized bridge going across here. So my grain is running perpendicular to the top grain. And that's going to give you a pretty strong cleat. I wanted to get that cleat spread over a wide area so that you had a crack over here, and if your cleat went here, you could end up cracking it again right on the other side of the cleat. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to cover, 5, 6, 7, 8 grain lines on each side of that crack. So I did want to use a fairly good sized cleat. Now, this is a 70s D28, and I took the great big rosewood bridge plate out of it. Well, the bridge plate wasn't holding that crack shut, So you had to humidify it, get it closed, and then cleat it back together. Once that was all done, and I was happy with the way it went together, and when I'm clamping these in there, I also used a long piece of wood, about yay long, put it on the top, and that was my top clamp. I put 2 clamps on the top of that. That presses the top down flat. You don't want to get your two halves crooked. You know, you want them pretty flush. So that long piece of wood ridged over the top and flattened it down, and did a pretty good job. This one crack here is already almost done, but I'm going to show you how I did the second crack here, which we actually need to do. Once I'm happy with the crack, it's all closed up and everything like this one is. This is nice and closed. I get super glue, and this is Glue Boost super glue. This is a flexible super glue that is designed specifically for finish, top coat, and ding repair solution. The difference between this stuff and regular super glue, even the Stu Mac super glue, is that it's flexible. If you ever try to do this with regular super glue, you're going to find out that it dries really hard. And what happens is it's hard to sand down the hard super glue hump. You know, it'll make a little hump. It's hard to sand down that hump without sanding down the finish. So you got to have a super glue that's pretty close to the finishing composition. And this stuff is great for that. Really good for that. I don't know how good it is even as a super glue, but as a finish repair, it's pretty good. So what we have here on this crack, we're going to look at this one. And I doubt you can see this, but I'm going to bring it up here and try to get the light on it. But you might be able to see. I think right there you can see it. Trying to get that light on. You can see it's got a little bit of, kind of what looks like a scar. That's the raised super glue. And what we want to do is scrape that flush and then level sand it very, very carefully, because you do not want to bust through the finish. So I've got a real thin scar right there. I used the thin Glue Boost, and I used a micro pipette like that I get from Lutherie's Mercantile. And basically what I did is I very carefully ran the most accurate finish line that I could down here. You know, I put my finger alongside of it and ran it down there. Try not to get super glue all over the top of the guitar. You know, you want to keep it as tight on that crack as you can, because the less work you have to do in cleaning up a super glue mesh, the better. Got that done. Let it dry. Glue Boost also makes an accelerator that's really good. A lot of accelerators will turn the super glue white. You don't want that, obviously. Their accelerator does not do that, and it works really good. It can eat the finish, so you want to be careful. Just kind of use just a very fine mist over there, and then I left it alone for even an hour after that, you know, to make sure it was nice and hard. All right, then what I'm going to do is take a utility razor blade that I've broken. I put it in the vise and snapped it and made a smaller piece, and you put tape on the sides like this. And that's a trick. I'm pretty sure I learned that from Frank Ford. And what that does is gives you a layer of tape right here on the razor blade, so you're not going to scratch the sides as you're pulling it. You're only gonna scrape down this little center part right here. Now, you can't use that as your final deal, but what it's really good for is leveling the super glue thing. It looks like a little mountain ridge. It's got little high ridges and things like that. You don't want to start level sanding it, because you'll have to sand too much. The less sanding you do on this finish, the better, because you do not want to break through that finish. So I'm going to start with one of these, and what I do is just scrape this like this, pull it down here, back and forth, and get that level. I'm going to show you this in a second. Here, you can hear it scraping. And what I'm doing is taking the high ridges off of that finish line. Go back and forth. This is just a tedious job, you know. You got to be careful. You got to check it. The tape will keep from eating into the finish, and you're just going to run that razor blade right down there. It helps to angle it just a little bit sometimes. And I'll show it to you now. And there's your line. See that little pile of stuff? That's the super glue that I've scraped up off the top. So, keep doing on this. I'm probably not going to show you the whole thing because it's tedious. And if you look, you can see the top of it getting flat here. The top's getting flat and matted. And you know you're taking the finish off, or you know you're taking the super glue off. Just do it in nice broad strokes here. And you know, there's super glue that we've taken off of this. Now, when you get that to where you like it, so when it quits scraping, let's go a little more. I can always cut this out, the tedious scraping portion of it. This is why I don't like doing it, because it's a tedious job, takes a lot of time, and you know, what am I going to do? Charge you $200 for this, you know? I guess some guys do. Some guys charge, what, $20 an inch or something? And this is 3, 6, 9, 10 inches of crack right here, so $200. But I'm not going to charge that much on this one. I'm thinking about just swapping the owner crack repair for that. It's very mild. I can't even see it anymore. I should just quit talking about it. Very mild finish damage. When you get this done, it's going to quit scraping and it's just going to start sliding over the top. Right there, it's starting to slide. You can probably hear that on the camera. You can hear the difference in tone now. It's not scraping, it's just sliding over it. Right here. I've got that sanded off. And you can see your finish line, you can see the super glue line going away. Right now, and I'm looking at this in the light, I can see a line right here with the super glue's kind of wobbly, but over here, it's flush and I can't see it anymore. So let's see if we can take a look at that now. So you can see where I'm at on this. Get that light, there it is. Okay. Now at some point, you've done all that you can do with the taped razor blade, and then what I do is get another little razor blade like this. Again, it's broken off, very small piece, and I come in here and very, very lightly scrape that across the top. I don't want it digging into the finish at all, and you got to be very careful that there's not a burr or anything on the edges. Boy, you don't want that, you know. Smaller you can get this piece, the better. And I'm going to do that very, very lightly. I'm not even putting any pressure. I'm just kind of dragging it over there. It's very useful to get the light on here so that you can see what you're doing. What I'm doing there is just trying to take it down a little bit more. It's nice over here on the end. And right up on top here, I still see a little bit. There it goes. It's getting dull. Starting to catch that. This is the key to the whole thing, is to try to get as much of that super glue or finish repair erased with the scraper. The sander is a little trickier to use, you know. You generally won't scrape through the finish here if you don't give it much pressure. But you can darn sure sand through the finish. And now I'm focusing on this one little section right here. And again, be taking a look at that, make sure I'm not scratching the side or anything. And this is why you want to get that level, the two halves level, because otherwise you're going to be scraping wood off on this side, on the high side. Scrape, scrape, scrape. I like it up here by the bridge. That looks really nice. Just one little piece right here. Put that light on it again. Okay, I feel like I'm about to hit the finish if I go any further. Now what I do is take a piece of 400 or 600 grit sandpaper that's been soaking in water. I've got a little block right here that's level, and this is the level sanding part. And you want to tuck that piece of sandpaper up there as nice as you can get it along your block so that there's not a lot of it hanging off on there. In other words, if there's another piece of sandpaper kind of hanging off the block, it's going to scratch the top. And then you work this in here very carefully, not much pressure. I like to use just I don't go back and forth too much. I use a straight stroke coming across the top here. You do it just about like that. Wipe it dry with your hand or a paper towel. Take a look at it. And looking pretty good. I'm looking for any of that super glue line. You can see the little wavy line going across it right there. And there's just a little bit in the middle where I was sanding on just a little bit there, or scraping on this little section right here. Now what I'm going to do here is put a little bit more pressure on this side of my sanding block. Back and forth on that. Stop. Wipe it off. That looks good. Okay? Now I'm going to stop. There's a little bit of super glue dust. Alright, so here's what it looks like right now. And you can probably see, you can see where it's dull. But you can also see that it's pretty level. Alright. Now, you get your secret weapon out. What's that? A bit of sticky stuff there. Might be glued to a drop of glue or something. We're going to get it out of there. Use that wet sanding block again. Just a little bit. I felt it. There we go. Got it. Alright. Let me get my secret weapon. There's two ways you can do this now. This is micro mesh cloth, and it comes in a lot of various grits and things like that. I used to use this, but even then, you couldn't quite get it right. Stu Mack sells these things, which I like a lot better. And what they are is little squares of very fine graded sandpaper. So this one's 1500, and this one is 2500, and I like to lay them out like this. I've got some ready to go in here. Let me get them out. So that's a 1300, 15, 25. Here's the other one. This is the 800. 800. That's where we want to start. A 2000, 2000, 2500. And this is a 2500. So I've got these all ready to go. So I get those laid out like that. And then start with these. Now, I just use my fingers. You can also stick them on that piece of wood I just had. You can do this too. Nothing wrong with that. And what you do when you sand is you're going to scratch it. Every time you use a grit, it scratches it. you got to finer and finer and finer and finer and finer scratches. You have to cross cut those scratches. So if your first scratch goes this way, your second scratch needs to go this way, your third one needs to go this way, and then you start cutting across there. So you're going to go this way, and then at an angle, and then another angle, and then you can come back to the original direction, and you keep going like that. You can use a swirl at the very end, sometimes. So I've got this on this block that's sticky on one side, which is really helpful. And I just go very lightly again, up and down the grain on this one. And I'm going to go ahead and do the whole top in between the two cracks here. Very little pressure at all. And see, it comes off the block, so you know a lot of and that's because it's still wet right up here, so it's stuck on there. But I just use my thumb a lot of times and just do that. Now, if you paid attention to that, you've got to catch all of your scratches. So if you start with 800 on a space this big, then the next grit has got to go this big, and the next grit's got to go this big, and the next grit, so to make sure you catch everything. So try to work in the smallest area that you can. So I've done that one, and you might have to go back over this a couple times. So this is the 13. Now I'm going to come across at a little bit of an angle. Fast, very light touch here. Hardly any pressure at all. You're probably not going to sand through the finish with these. These are super fine grit, and so you know you can not be too afraid of doing that. That's it. Put that one out. Move to the next one. You really got to go through all the grits. Here's something you want to really watch for, is that little bent corner right there. I'm just going to actually just bend that up out of the way. That will scratch. So I went this way. I'm going to cut this way. Almost across the grain. Because there's really not any grain. It's a finish, you know. Back and forth. That's it. Wipe it off. Now you can take a look at how you're doing right here and see if you missed some of the original. We'll get the light around on it. So far I'm doing a good job. Let's take a look at it. I'll show you what it looks like right now. Right now it's a matte finish because it's not shining it yet. But you can see it's definitely a matte finish right there. One trick you can use is to use soapy water on this. Soapy water will make it lubricated a little bit and can help. These papers here are not water papers much. You can put a little bit of water on it, but you know they get kind of sticky. Back and forth. What the water does is removes the little pieces of finish under there to make sure you don't scratch it. Acts as a lubricant, and it's only good up, you know, on the final polishing here. And again, I'm going bigger than my original. And that was the 2000 grit. Stick that back on there. You might have to go back and do it again, so that's why I'm keeping my sandpapers out here. And then the last one I'm going to go to is a 2500 grit. These are Tolacut. You don't have to get them from StuMac, but you know, I'm throwing an order on there, and I generally do. They'll last you a long time. One square can be reused. Okay, now this one, see, this is the last one, so this is one I might swirl a little bit. Just to blend all those scratches together. Back and forth. You know, you want a random motion, ideally. Okay. Set those there, and I'm going to wipe that off now. And get a paper towel and do this. Actually, not a paper towel. I'm going to use an actual guitar cleaning cloth. They're real soft, and be very, very careful. Don't want to scratch it right now. Obviously. Okay, let's look at it in the light. Oh, that's pretty good. I see the matte finish, but I don't see any scratches outside of that. Over here, it's blended in, matte finish. Feels great. Feels smooth. Not catching on anything. You know, that's nice and smooth. Here's what it looks like. And even though they claim that you can get a mirror finish, I have never been able to get a mirror finish using sandpapers. That always comes with the last step here. I use the micro mesh for pick guards. I use the micro mesh to smooth out the corners of pick guards and things like that. I do use it, just not for finish repairs. Could be done. It could be used for finish repairs. But I've never had as much luck with it. Okay, so here's this guitar. Make sure it's steady. I don't want it falling off the bench on camera. And this is just a foam pad, again from StuMac. I use this quite a bit for this kind of thing. This is what I use for the peg heads when I'm doing tuners. Meguiar's Mirror Glaze #2 Fine Cut Cleaner. Check it out. Make sure that top's clean. No dust on it. Smear it on. Smear it around. I've got a rag for this one. This rag has got a lot of that micro mesh. Put your drill on high. And I went again outside of my repaired area. Try to blend it in. This rag, like I said, has been soaked. It's picked up so much of this stuff that it's got a lot in here. Well, that looks really good. I really cleaned up with the heat damage. Man, that's, you can only see the striants on it at a certain angle, but man, it looks almost like bear claw. Alright, not a bad idea. If that's too shiny, it's not a bad idea to just go ahead and hit the rest of it just a little bit. See how much pressure? I didn't put a lot of pressure on it. That foam pad flattened out a little bit, but I wasn't, getting down on it or anything. Letting that thing do the work. clean up the bridge scar here a little bit because it's got some polishing compound in it. You can still see the cracks, of course, and that's because they were dirty. When they're open like that, they pick up dirt, they pick up discoloration. That's all you can do with those, you know. The main thing is they're flat, they're sealed, and they're cleated, and they're not going to go anywhere. And this is what we have right now. Get that light to go across. Looks pretty good. Let me get that light a little bit better. Switch hands here. Yeah. Looking at it from the top, you can see it's all nice and shiny. And there we have a crack repair. Yeah, that's pretty complicated. There's the new bridge too. It's on. The holes are drilled. This is ready for saddle and ready to be strung up, except that the frets are in really bad condition. So before I even bother stringing it up, I'm going to go ahead and do the frets, probably the tuners, and probably the nut too. So I will take care of the whole neck in the next step before I even bother stringing it up. This one has a Southeast Asian rosewood bridge plate in it. There's the cleat right there, right behind it. The other cleats over here. The two braces come across here. So there's really no need to put cleats back in here. The braces are going to take care of that. I did check the braces to make sure they were not loose. They look pretty good. I couldn't get anything in there, so you know the braces are still doing their job as far as holding that crack together. You still got some finished cracks in here from the original, which is good. You know, I don't want to take that out and make it look like a new instrument. If you wanted, you could come here and scuff this up a little bit now. The shinier you get it, the more your imperfections are going to show. And so, if you can stand having a matte finish on this, you know, a non-shiny top, you can come back in with that lash grit, for instance, and actually go over the. Now that it's shiny and it's consistent, you could actually come back with that and dull the whole top a little bit, make it look old again. But we'll leave this one alone. I think it looks pretty good. And then we're going to ding it up. And again, the main thing is those cracks are level. They're not sticking up. They've got glue in them. They're closed. They're pretty good. I don't see any pitting. Smooth. The finish is real smooth right there. That looks pretty good. So I'm happy with that. And I don't mind looking at the cracks. I mean, that's part of the guitarist's character, you know. The main thing is to get them stable. So anyway, that's a quick one. Hope it was quick. Crack repair. The keys to the crack repair are just to be patient. Don't rush it. Check it frequently. The instant you see that you're starting to maybe go through the original finish, stop. You know, you might even call it a day. There are times when you can't do it. If you break through the original finish, you're going to lose the color, and that's going to look worse than anything else. If you have a discolored spot, you know. So if you try to come back in and touch it up with your colored lacquer, it's going to look like this bridge scar right here. It's going to be a slightly different color, and it's just not going to look good sitting out here on the top. The bridge scoop, I don't mind too much because it's up under the bridge, and for one thing, it looks a little bit like a shadow. For the other thing, once the strings go across it, it hides that a lot. It's just in a lot less conspicuous place than a brown spot right out here on the top, you know? Which, I mean, if that's what happens, that's what happens. But you want to try to avoid that. So the key is to check your work. I'd like to say you go slowly, but that doesn't make any difference because you can go through the top going slow too. You go a little bit, you wipe off your water, you take a look at it, you look at your reflections, make sure you're catching all of your previous scratches as you go to the finer and finer grit, and then try to polish the top fairly evenly. You know, just got to be patient and meticulous on it. So, okay, let's get done with this guitar. I'm gonna work on this later. I gotta go back to Los Alamos in the morning. So this guitar is gonna go with me, and I'll do the frets and that kind of thing over there. What else is going on? The bridge looks really good. I'm happy with the bridge. Bridge location's great. So looking forward to getting this one strung up. So what we'll do with this one is get the frets done and the nut done and the tuners done, and then we'll string it up and see how it sounds non-scalloped, and then we'll make an evaluation on scalloping from there. Because this is a different top, like I said, it might be Engelmann, but it definitely is not my normal 70s Martin top. It might be weaker. I'm not sure. But before I scallop it, I think we definitely should string it up and take a listen to it and see how the top reacts to tension, because it's got a new smaller bridge plate in it. And so there's a change right there. It's got a taller bridge. It's going to have a taller saddle on it eventually. I'm going to have the saddle height that I want. So we'll have the entire soundboard the way we want it, more or less, and string it up and see how the top reacts to that before we just rush willy-nilly into scalloping. You know, just always a good idea to be careful on that and not just do things routinely. Watch the top, see what it looks like, see what it does. So, alright, see you later.